Hey folks, hope life is going great for you. Welcome to another Frontier Indica video. Now I'm sure most of you have noticed how in recent years it has become very fashionable to mock, criticize and demonize Brahmins as a way to virtue signal about how progressive and sensitive you are towards the plight of marginalized groups. Articles, posters and tweets viciously targeting the so-called Brahmanical system and the Brahmin community are to be found a dime a dozen. One such recent post which went viral on Twitter was a thread by journalist Dilip Mandal, who painstakingly noted down 30 separate points describing what he referred to as Brahmin Privilege. So we'll be using this thread as a reference point for the general leftist narrative against Brahmins, as it is, if nothing else, a concise summary of their usual arguments. If you want to take a minute and just go through the tweets on your own, you can do that by using the link in the description. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and piece apart this thread. What we'll do is that we'll look at the substantive arguments which have been broadly made and not go exactly point-wise, since that would be too long-winded and convoluted. The first few points essentially assert that Brahmins get a lot of undue respect in society, that people seem to be exceptionally deferential or accommodative towards them. Well, this is true to some degree, but it gets blown way out of proportion. Caste hierarchy is a product of a feudal agrarian economy, and its relevance in large cities is greatly reduced. Having a Brahmin surname is a much less important criterion for favorable treatment in a large urban center than, for example, being college educated, English speaking, having high disposable income, etc. Even in villages and small towns, it can be argued that the Brahmins tend to have a more respectable position in society because they tend to be more educated or own more land. This hypothesis gains credence when we see that agriculturally or economically dominant communities like Jats, Patels and others, whose Varn status has historically not been very clear, still enjoy immense social capital in several states. Next, another similar kind of related claim is about prejudice, or rather the lack of it, that Brahmins can eat food according to their traditional diet without prejudice, that they can advertise in matrimonials with their caste label without any apprehensions of judgment. Although these statements are certainly true when taken in isolation, the point they are being used to send across is not. Vegetarianism, for example, may be seen as more acceptable because of religious reasons. Many religious Hindus consider a vegetarian diet an essential part of their faith, and they believe that eating meat goes against Sattvic principles. Brahmins' choice of vegetarianism is not socially accepted more because of them being Brahmins, but because most religious Hindus consider it to be a superior diet sanctioned by Providence. Even when it comes to matrimonials, almost all Indian communities openly advertise the prospective groom or bride with a caste label. Yes, there is uncompromising bias, but that bias is either in favor of their own endogamous group or it is a lower caste versus upper caste thing, not necessarily a Brahmin versus non-Brahmin thing. Also, this idea that Brahmins can never face prejudice is itself audacious. So many liberal upper-class urbanites will look down upon a Brahmin who regularly wears a dhoti and has a choti, considering those to be signs of religious backwardness. Isn't that a form of prejudice then? Moving on to the next one, it is claimed that Brahmins are being hypocritical by opposing reservation in India because they avail of affirmative action in Western countries. This is by far the most absurd argument in Mr. Mandal's thread. Affirmative action in Western countries almost never helps communities like Indians and Chinese in the first place. For example, in the US, affirmative action policies are primarily targeted towards blacks and Hispanics, who are considered to be underrepresented and socio-economically backward. Asian communities are in fact the biggest losers in the affirmative action game. At Harvard, for example, Asian Americans had the lowest acceptance rate out of 4 major race groups between 1995 to 2013. Someone really needs to tell the left that big tech has placed individuals like Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella in the driver's seat because of their competence, not because they are brown-skinned Brahmins. Another issue which is raised is that of presence or representation, that Brahmins are overrepresented in the cultural sphere, in things like music, literature, etc., and they are also overrepresented in important institutions. As far as the former point goes, it's just quite silly. If you look at it realistically, does anyone really think of the caste or community of the artist when listening to a song or reading a book? How many Hindus are bothered if a composition is by A.R. Rahman? How many Hindi speakers have a problem with the fact that a vast chunk of Bollywood movies are produced by Punjabi Khatris? How many Tamilians care that Rajnikant is a Marathi? The answer to all these questions is not very many. Coming to the more serious question of institutional representation. Now, are Brahmins overrepresented in powerful institutions? Of course they are. But the real question is, if that is due to bias in their favor or because of something else. It can as easily be said that they are overrepresented because of reasons like high competence, high value given to education, strong work ethic, etc. There is obviously an element of in-group nepotism displayed by all castes, not just Brahmins, to promote their own within the state. But at the end of the day, no one caste is so overwhelmingly dominant that it can sideline all the others. A similar point about representation is also raised vis-a-vis the private sector, that it's easy for Brahmins to get hired because people from their own caste favor them. Now, what the left doesn't understand is that in a free market, if any company would base its hiring primarily on the caste of an individual and not on competence or merit, it would quickly get wiped out by its competitors. Moreover, the way corporate nepotism exists to a partial degree in India is that it is much more about favoring your relatives, your college alumni, your family friends, etc., than it is about hiring candidates from the same caste as you. And anyone who has worked a day in a private firm can attest to this. Unfortunately, most leftists haven't, so they wouldn't really know. And with that, guys, we have broadly covered and rebutted the usual arguments the left relies on to instigate resentment against Brahmins. Hope all of you enjoyed watching this video. If you'd like to watch more content like this in the future, do subscribe to the channel to stay updated.